Good afternoon and welcome to this event organised by the Public Sector Committee of the Ulster Society of Chartered Accountants Ireland. For those of you who don't know me, I am Colette Kane and I am the Chair of the Public Sector Committee. As the first event of the year, I would also like to wish you a very happy new year. I'm delighted we are able to bring you this event on cybersecurity, a topic high on the agenda of many of our members. Today's two speakers will be able to give you insights on cyber threats, but most importantly, how to be better prepared to prevent and react when there are threats. There will be an opportunity for questions after both presentations. Please use the Q&A box. Please don't wait to the end to put in your questions and put them in as you think of them. The first speaker this afternoon is Colm McDonnell, who is a partner in Deloitte's Risk Advisory Practice. Colm will use his 15 years experience leading the cyber team for Deloitte to provide an overview of current issues in this space and how to be better prepared to counteract the risks. So it's over to you, Colm.
And good afternoon, everybody. And I'll echo Colette's New Year's wishes to everyone. Delighted to be with you. And as we continue in this presentation world, virtual presentation world, what I'm going to do is put up my presentation. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see each other. Just to introduce myself, my name is Colm McDonnell, partner in Risk Advisory for the last 15 years, looking after our cyber business. And I think it is fair to say the last 2 or 3 years have been much busier than the previous years, just in terms of the events themselves. I think the preparedness over the years has kind of evolved, and in terms of, you know, we were used to kind of one major attack in Ireland a year, to now there's a number of attacks each quarter. Some of them get into the public domain, most of them do not get into the public domain, and that really is set out in relation to this slide here that I'm presenting, in relation to how the cyber world has changed, and cyber attackers are businesses. And prior to 2017, I think it would be fair to say that they really did focus in relation to, at the top of the pile, military and government. That was government to government, or else people who were trying to make a name for themselves by attacking military and government, and financial services, where there was easy money, as it was seen, in relation to getting actual funds and actual monies from financial services, initially very much focused in relation to banking, and then moved over to other parts of financial services. Since 2018, 2019, probably in Ireland, we've really seen a compression in relation to the market, and you can see some of the high impact cyber attacks that have been published since then. But all industries very much now at the forefront of what the cyber attackers are really trying to do. I thought this is just useful in relation to ransomware, and from a number of pieces of research from a very good article in the FT late last year. And I think it is worthwhile sharing just some of these charts. And small businesses, these are global surveys, and this survey by CodeWave on the top right is really what globally would be seen as small businesses, would be the majority of businesses in Ireland. And really you can see that the small businesses, as they're called, really have come in front and center. And there's a logic to that when you think about how financial services is still under attack, but less popular, and really it's come to all businesses. On the left-hand side, the slide really is looking at kind of the numbers of attacks, unprecedented in 2021. And while I don't offer investment advice, and I haven't ticked the box on Chartered Accountants Ireland's whether I do provide investment advice box annually, it is interesting to see how Bitcoin has increased in value, because it is the currency of choice in relation to paying for ransomware. And organizations either need to have Bitcoin to pay, or have an amount of Bitcoin to enable them to pay in the future. And I will talk about later on how and whether you should pay a ransomware attack. Also, I thought it was useful in relation to the Audit source survey in relation to ransomware and the payment of ransomware. And it should be remembered that cyber is a business, and therefore they are open to negotiation. So you can see with each side of the types of ransomware and the values that you can get discount in relation to it, and the cost of the ransom attack. So it shows that they can be negotiated with should you enter into negotiation, but also the fact that you can negotiate down in relation to price. Then as I look at the bow tie model, which is a traditional model as it relates in relation to cyber, as it relates to health and safety initially, actually. And really what it's looking for is looking on the left-hand side here in relation to threats. The event is in the middle and the consequence of that event actually occurring. And really we're looking at the bow tie in terms of the traditional health and safety within a traditional factory. You know, what are the threats? You know, bad ventilation, open flame, and a rag. You get in the middle, then a fire. And what are the the consequences of that fire? At worst, loss of life, destruction of assets, and production outage. Cyber is exactly the same in terms of how you can put it onto the bow tie model. Slightly more complex in terms of how you protect and the consequences of it, and the threats being multiple. And obviously being newer. So obviously health and safety within factory environment has been around a long time now. But just looking at some of the examples of the controls you put against the threat of a cyber attack, you're looking at bad patching, remote access, poor network security. Those threats materialize, you have your cyber event, and then really what is it that gets you to recover, that allows you to be able to recover quickly. And it is about actually ultimately starting off, do you know what you need to recover? Do you have the backups? Do backups work? And across the top of that is, do you have the overarching controls? Who's in charge? Who's really there? Who's going to make the shots? Because there is going to be decisions that are going to have to be made post an event, that you're just going to have to live with the consequences of it. And I'm working with a number of clients at the moment who are in the middle of very large outages, and one of them yesterday, 6 weeks in to the whole business, is not performing. Production is happening, but they're not able to do anything other than produce. They can't dispatch. And working with their CEO to say, actually, there is just going to be decisions that you're going to make that are wrong, but you're going to just have to make them and make them quickly. And this is something in relation to that governance of, are people comfortable to make decisions in a positive way, recognizing that there is going to be some of those decisions ultimately will be wrong, but you can't wait for the perfect solution during a cyber attack, because they don't exist. So then looking at trying to focus on the right thing. So you're going to have to make decisions. You're going to have to make decisions about kind of what you bring back first, the sequence of what you bring back, how you bring it back, and who needs to be brought back. And really what I have here is a perfect pyramid. Every organization needs to look at their business and work out what their pyramid exists or looks like, from the extinction event, so it's all over, through to actually in this pyramid, I have online customer platforms is at the bottom of it. While for other businesses, online customer platforms may be higher up, where you may split some of these out. But it is working out to say, actually, what are the most significant that we need to be very careful of, and what are ones that will happen. Every organization it will be attacked or has been attacked. And even if you have been attacked, you will be attacked again, unfortunately. And it is trying to work out your stack as you put them into the pyramid. And every organization has something different, and you need to work out what is the most important in relation to yours. So you can't really look at this in relation to IT. This really has to be looked from a business in terms of getting comfortable of when you are attacked, what do you do? You have to look at it under business services. And really at Deloitte, what we look like and say to clients when they are attacked, you want to look like a company again, or an organization, but let's just use the corporate for the moment. You want to look like a company to your clients, to your customers, to your suppliers, to your staff, to the wide world, even though they know you've been attacked. Therefore, you need to understand what are the key business services that allow you to look like a company. And to do that, you need to understand end to end what those critical business services are. And not only from you as an internal person, but as an external, is that what they think you looking like a company is? To allow you to do that, you need to understand what is within that business services, what people are required within that business service, what technologies are required within that business service, and indeed the throughputs as to what goes through that. So certain things you may say, actually, we can go manually do that business service. We don't need technology. And there's certain things that you go, actually, we do need technology, but we have a fallback technology, or we must get back the business critical technology because it needs to come back first. So understanding your business services so that you can look like a company. And looking like a company is a lot of hard effort, because you are like the proverbial swan. You are paddling like mad to look beautiful on top, to look like a company. And in a time where there is shortages of people in our businesses because of the nature of how businesses have been run, and just where we are in relation to the business cycle and less people around, trying to run your business to look like a company when you're not exactly overcome with resources is very difficult, and there is certain consequences in terms of over-reliance on certain people, and I can talk about that later or in the Q&A in terms of kind of burnout and understanding how you kind of give people during an emergency time out to refresh. So then looking at those business services, and you're looking at the kind of setting tolerance limits to say, actually, which one of those business services are the most important, because everything can't be brought back in one go. And as we look at this, what we've seen, and I've seen a lot in clients, is at the initial outage, it's an IT issue. It then becomes it can become, without proper governance, they who shout loudest gets their business service back first, which is not the right answer. So therefore, in advance and as part of your business preparedness, you need to understand actually what are the tolerances for your critical business services that you allow, and is there buffer zones, and how do you manage those buffer zones to allow you to stay afloat while you get yourself back up and walking, in fact, rather than even back up and running. Then just in terms of the anatomy of an attack, and really there's a number of ways, and there's many ways in relation to how an attacker gets into an organization. I've just set out 4 here with real life example clients as to how it happened. You'll see there is one pretty common piece to 3 of the 4, and that is the attacker escalating their privileges. So ultimately what they want to do is to get to the top of the pile in relation to the identity and access management solution, whatever that is within your organization, that allows them to have full command over your entire network. How they get in and get to that is through either the phishing emails that we've seen, and or smishing, or whatever form of attack that might be, and then deploying either malware or kind of getting in through remote access through some poorly configured cloud service that you may have to a third party, or you may have to across your organization. But effectively, it really is about escalated privileges. And down the bottom, you can see some of the weaknesses exploited in relation to that. I'm going to focus on the one in the middle, because it's long suffering for organizations, and one that organizations have ignored for a long time. In relation to privileged access, organizations, as people come and move their way through an organization, they gain additional privileges, and in many organizations, their prior role or their prior access rights aren't closed down efficiently or effectively, I beg your pardon. So it is one that people really do need to focus on, because once an attacker is in your organization, they are trying to leverage privilege all the time. And so by having tight privilege over provisioning of users is very important. There's another old gnarly one in relation to unpatched systems on the bottom right that I'd like to talk about. And this is straightforward stuff in relation to patching systems within an organization. 2 points I'd like to raise in relation to that in the brief time that we have. One is in relation to IT taking responsibility for not patching systems, where IT have decided that it would be too much of a disruption to businesses for them to take a legacy system, an old system offline to patch it, because what harm can be done? The point I'd like to make, that the salient point is, and the crucial point is, it's about IT making that decision. That should be an IT and a business decision. And too often, post-incident, we have it where IT have made a decision not to patch a system. And that's something that IT people need to recognize, that they shouldn't be risk accepting the patching of systems. This needs to be a business-wide decision in relation to it. And for many systems, they're easy enough to patch. It's just that people don't want the disturbance of taking a system offline for a minute, an hour, a day, whatever that happens to be. Believe me, after an attack, people have huge remorse about not taking systems off for periods of time to allow them to patch. So that's in the old patching, if I can call that. There is obviously zero-day attacks where unpatched systems are exploited within minutes, days, within minutes, hours indeed. The point about that is everyone is vulnerable to those, but there is an ecosystem of cyber attacker which people should be aware of. So to buy a vulnerability, open source vulnerability to allow you to attack an unpatched system from 3 years ago, to acquire that vulnerability on the dark web is much cheaper than acquiring a 0-day. So the point here being, if you are an attacker, you're going to obviously buy the cheapest tools you can that attack as many organizations as you possibly can, to allow you to mine and find your compromised customer. So therefore, if you as an organization are saying, actually what we want to do is we want to get away from the bulk of the attackers, you do that by having good unpatched systems. By not having them, you go into the realm of people who are able to buy an awful lot of exploits fairly cheaply and make you a vulnerable organization. So that's just covering off some of the areas that are traditional as anything, but areas that were seen as audit findings, maybe internal audit findings, but really are important when it comes to cyber and protecting yourself in relation to it. In terms of then the human operated ransomware, so invariably there's automated, and one of the great things about AI is they've brought lots of benefit to businesses, but they've also brought lots of benefit to the cyber business too, in terms of the use of AI, in terms of attacking organizations. Cyber is no different to someone robbing your house. How it works, there's that reconnaissance, there's the kind of the move around and see, actually, who am I going to attack? Who's going to give me the best bang for my time? And then what do I do in terms of getting my bounty? And cyber attackers are similar to an organization of, they don't want to waste their time. So therefore they want to get the maximum return from the time that they have spent in terms of robbing an organization. So they do a lot of reconnaissance in relation to identifying who they're going to attack. And then when they get in, they may be in for weeks or months, just sitting carefully, quietly, looking at your organization. Then what they'll do is they'll use various tools that they effectively, as I was saying earlier, they'll move themselves up the value chain in relation to their privilege. They'll move around your organization to identify where your most valuable assets are, where either your IP is, or where there is embarrassing emails, or within the legal, they invariably have a little look in legal. And what they do use, and I see it at many clients, is similar to if you're doing e-discovery, they'll use keywords to hunt your network. So when they're in your network, they will use keywords to actually look around your network and to see where the valuables are. And then ultimately, either they'll introduce ransomware when you find them, or they'll introduce ransomware if there's either not a lot, or out of just a second line of attack, they'll introduce ransomware into your system just to get you double dipped in relation to the cyber attack. But effectively, the day you discover that you have a cyber attack, I've yet to find out within an investigation that is the day that the perpetrator entered your network. They're invariably in there a long time. So then just looking at kind of some of the capabilities you need to do, there's 3 pieces to this. is you want to prevent intrusion. You won't, but you want to make yourself as hard as you possibly can be to be got at. Within that, you need to put in a number of different solutions, ultimately getting to zero trust, where you know where everyone is, and you can see that's within the blast radius as well. Then you want to limit what we call the blast radius. So within that, I always use the analogy of a home, that if you have a house with 10 rooms and you have a sensor on your alarm that goes off if someone comes into the room, that means invariably the alarm will go off when they move into one room. If you have an open plan house with one room and one sensor, the alarm will go off once. Therefore, the blast radius, where that person can rob, is your entire house. If you have 10 rooms with 10 sensors, the blast radius is limited to one room. Obviously, they can move around the rooms once they've been identified, but you get my point, I hope. And so what you want to do is to develop and design your network and design your infrastructure to limit the blast radius, that when you are attacked and the intruder gets in, that they cannot move too far around your business. Then the rapid recovery, and there's two pieces to this. One is being able to do the business services piece. So three elements: the business services piece, the burst capacity, which I talked about earlier, of, organizations are lean. Therefore, you need burst capacity to be able to come in and support you as you try and look like a company without the technologies. And then the other piece is in relation to the data recovery. And I speak to clients around this, that traditionally, if a system breaks at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, you're able to go to your backup from a minute to 3 or the previous night and say, okay, we know that we've lost our system, but I'm able to start again from midnight, and then whatever your recovery path is in terms of rekeying from midnight to 3 o'clock, and you're back up and running. However, if you're attacked, you don't know when the perpetrator came in and started manipulating data. So therefore, if you discover it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you can't be sure what day you can actually go back and take the tape from, because initially you don't know whether they came in an hour ago, 24 hours ago, 24 months ago. So it's not as easy to recover post cyber attack, because you don't know what data tape, if they're not encrypted, that you can go back to and use as your start point. And that it's areas like that actually, when I go back to talking to CEOs during issues, is at a certain point in time after an investigation, you have to put a flag in the ground and say, okay, we're going to go for the 1st of June, because based on what we have, that looks where we are. Then the other is in relation to monitoring and just understanding what you're doing, how you're doing it, and what can you see within your business. And are you able to see many mini attacks, not just one big attack? These slides will be shared with you, but I do think it is, in terms of the role of the board and senior executives, it does cover off the areas that I've spoken about in terms of understanding what you have, communication and burst capacity. One area that I do think is worthwhile is actually taking out some of the reports that would have come from your auditors, compliance, external auditors, et cetera, to say, actually, did they tell us stuff in the past that we thought we could, that weren't important, or we could put out 3 months or 6 months, that actually, because of the nature of the cyber environment at the moment, we need to bring back? And is there more we could do to enable us to be better, in a better posture for the future? So with that quick run through, I'll hand you back to Colette. I'm happy to take questions later on.
Thank you, Colm. Certainly scared the life out of me, so hopefully that was the desired impact. So next up we have Gina McIntyre, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Special EU Programmes Body, which is one of our North-South bodies. Gina will outline her experience of how her organisation lived through a ransomware attack, and most importantly, Gina will offer some advice on how organisations can be better prepared through the lessons learned from SEUPB's experience. Thank you, Gina.
Thanks very much, Colette. And thanks, Colm. Thank you very much for inviting me along today to share the experience. And a lot of what Colm has talked about, I'll reflect on as well in how we handled the situation. So if you just maybe, Gary's going to do the very kind job of sharing my slides. So Gary, if you just move to the next slide, that would be great. Thanks. And you've heard all the technical aspect from Gary, and well, probably not all of it. I'm sure they could talk for days on it, but my experience, we're going to talk very much from the practical business point of view, what you actually do when you're there and how it affects you and all the team around you. And so I'll start with the question, you think you're prepared? We thought we were prepared. We thought, we were traditional IT infrastructure. We were compliant with all the appropriate IT security standards. We had even the baseline cybersecurity standards. And we were starting to look at our moving towards a more secure environment, such as the firewalls and the virus software. And I got a text at 1 a.m. on a Sunday morning, or night, to say from my IT manager, and I'll set the scene of, we have a massive IT team of 2. So I got a text from my IT manager to say, we've got a problem. And I was actually awake simply because I was reading in the Irish Times an article from a TD in Kilkenny saying how Irish businesses and organisations need to be better secured for cyber attacks during COVID. So I thought, what the hell? This is my dream, and I've actually fallen asleep. But he goes, we've got a problem, and it's a bad one. So, the initial is a wee bit of denial. You think typical IT, sure, everything's bad to them, but it'll be okay. It's probably just a virus and they'll get it sorted out. The usual. A little bit of denial. And then they're like, no, we have a really serious problem. All the systems are down. It's really bad. And you think, oh my gosh. And it is the perfect storm, because sitting here in Belfast, before cyber was such a big thing, this happened now about summer of 2019. So before cyber was always the world of James Bond or something. It wasn't actually, what would happen to a little organisation in Belfast. You think nobody sees you, what would you have of interest to them? Well, that's where you're wrong, because they see you and they are looking for you. And we hit the perfect storm of bank holiday weekend in July, COVID, everybody was out. What had happened, obviously, from March, all of the standards and the new security we were putting in place had all stopped to get staff out remote working. We had physical off-site backups that were taken away every week. That had stopped in March as well. And of course, obviously, we had our staff weren't in the office either. So you go into protection mode first, which is, sort of the crisis reaction. And being an accountant, my first thought was, oh my God, the money, is the bank secured? Can they get at the money? And let me tell you, trying to contact the bank I did eventually track down our account numbers from one of our staff who had them, but to try and get bank accounts stopped is not easy. So I would suggest that you can do it. I mean, you can set up code words, you can do all of that. I'm sure some of you may have that, but as a smaller org, we didn't have that. And you're trying to tell a bank to put a block on your bank account when you can't even send them an official email. So, you do all that. We had all the contacts of the staff simply because it was COVID and everybody was on WhatsApp groups. So there was emails or groups messages sent out at 2 a.m. saying, do not under any circumstances log on. So if you move to the next slide, Gary, this is the main one of sort of what we did, or how we managed it. Our IT manager was in Kerry at the time for his holidays, and thank God, being an IT nerd, he had his computer with him, and he had all in there, the system and how to cut the links. So they started overnight and early in the morning containing all of the information in our Belfast office to our other offices. And the only reason that it was found at such a time in the morning was because the other IT staff member had just had a new baby. So he was up just doing some routine checks and found this. So they were able to start cutting links and starting to close down systems overnight. And we knew then it was a ransomware attack. So it was a malware known as Matrix, and there was a ransom note for that. But you have no idea what you're facing at that stage. It's really unsettling. The level of uncertainty I can't even begin to describe, because you don't know what you've lost. You don't know if they're still in the system. Have they been watching you for a long time? Have they exfiltrated data? Do you expect a call for them? If, you know, can it be recovered? How long is it going to take? You're just standing, as I described it before, looking at black lumps of plastic sitting on a desk all around the office and knowing that every single one of them is useless. So we've of course undertook all our practice tests, our business continuity, tabletop planning. That's great when you're all brought in the room at the same time with your cup of coffee and your thing in front of you and saying, oh sure, our business continuity plan, we'll add another little page in here. What happens when you can't get in touch with people on holidays? Like our corporate services director was in Donegal, no signal. As I said, our IT manager had to handle this driving up from Kerry the next day. So and the staff were out. And so I would defy any one of you to be able to tell me how many staff records you hold right now without looking at any systems. How many staff do you actually have? Part-timers, full-timers, temp staff? What data do you hold on them? And what maybe old staff did you have, such as Colm was outlining, data that's, you know, no longer valid but hasn't been removed yet, just in case somebody needed it. So the level of uncertainty of what you don't know and what you aren't sure what's happened is like if you find, you come home and you find your house has been burgled and you're standing looking at it, you know it's been burgled, you don't know what you have to do, what's missing and what's been got, and you have to enter that premises blindfolded and barefooted to try and work out what to do. So luckily we had an auditor actually who'd worked with us before, who was a cyber expert, and we reached out to him and he was able to talk us through it because we didn't have a CISO on board, you know, a information security officer or anything. We had to rely on our contacts, but he talked us through the most important things to do immediately. And it was very quickly we realized that there was no way that we could handle this ourselves with the team of two. So what we did was we had to bring in an expert. And we had actually reached out to PwC to do that, and they came in and they were able to actually manage the crisis and the incident. But we, you know, first thing in the morning, we did invoked our business continuity plan, our crisis management plan, set up incident teams to deal with the ICO requirements, because not being able to access your data is a data breach. And you have to deal with it as a data breach. And I'll talk about that in a minute because it's huge. So we knew very early that we weren't going to try and track down the criminals. There was no point. There's keys out there. We did parallel processes reaching out to some of the national security agencies to see if they would have the key to this particular form of malware, but they didn't have. But what we did, we obviously contacted everybody we had to, PSNI, the Garda, because as Colette said, we're a north-south body, Action Fraud, the National Cybersecurity Centres, and you think that everybody's going to come to your rescue, or at least somebody is. Nobody comes to your rescue. The National Cybersecurity agencies could not even call us back for 48 hours. The PSNI did come down the next day, and you think, well, we're in the middle of a, you know, a blackmail ransomware. This is a crime. There's nothing they can do. And the only thing that they wanted from us was to keep the evidence, to get some evidence, and so that they could start going through it to see if they could link it to other crimes and that type of thing. But it was just way too big for us. And the biggest lesson for me was that you really have to manage your own expectations, because there is nobody there to pull you out. You have to act fast and you have to make decisions, and you have to do it on the basis of not knowing actually really what's going on. As I said, we brought in experts and we worked out very quickly what the issue was and where it was, and that there was no data exfiltration apparent. Our projects they were on a separate system, so they hadn't been affected, which was fantastic. But our staff details were, you know, and all of our records and systems. And the other thing, and I'll get on to the ICO in a minute, but you have to retain evidence as well as actually trying to get yourself back up and running. You are also investigating while also trying to get your business back and running and trying to decide what to do and where to go first. So we decided very early on that we would set aside some evidence on a separate server. we would gather all that because our backups were destroyed as well. They had been encrypted, and only the fact that they had moved out onto tape, we were able to actually get the backups on tape. But we had worked out anyway, we had physical backups that were 3 months old, but the backups were destroyed as well in terms of day to day. So I think we probably lost about 2 days. The last tape recording had shown the Friday, and this was on the Sunday, so we weren't too bad over the weekend. We decided to scrub all the systems and start again, and reinstall systems and restore from what we had. And that was where we had to work with the IT team, and even PwC had issues at that time because it was holiday time and it was COVID. So their staffing was lacking, and we had to bring in extra support as well for that. We decided to restore our systems, which we did. And as I said, all of these things are happening at the same time because you have to gather your evidence at the same time as getting back into business. And when you're trying to restore, you find out that suddenly the security keys you need for the packages that you run are in the system, which you've just scrubbed. So there's a whole lot of things that just really set you back. At times you just like, oh God, you have nothing, you have no material whatsoever. And from the outset as well, you've all the stakeholders you have to manage. As a government agency, we have 2 sponsor departments, Department of Finance in Northern Ireland and in Ireland. So, of course, they have to be informed immediately. Our Audit and Risk Committee have to be informed. Legal people have to be informed. And then the third parties who you're very concerned about in terms of social engineering for a future time, maybe like the project, somebody might come to them and say, oh, you know, we were SEUPB, we want money, or whatever it might be. So you have to watch for that. And the staff as well, who you're trying to keep your business running while at the same time dealing with this. Next slide, Guy, please. So what I would say then is that the few key points that we learned was, you know, you prioritize your needs. So as Guy said, everything can't happen at once. You have to decide what's most important. For us, it was communications and getting people back online, getting the finance function up and running so we could continue to pay our projects. And you have to take each of these aspects in turn. And it's really, really important to have one voice. And in this case, it was me, because you have to stick to the plan, you have to make the decisions, and you can't veer from them. And there's a lot of competing voices at the time, such as, you know, detection of the criminals, or preserving the evidence, getting back up and running. People saying, oh, I need. Everybody needs, and everybody's needs, you know, most important, but it's not, obviously. You have to stick to the plan, and you have to deal with the data breach as well, and look at what happened there. It's really important to look at managing the team. The well-being, as I said, we had a team of 2, with one with a new baby, and their health and well-being you have to be mindful of. The resilience of those who, naturally, anybody in working in IT, and this happens, their automatic feeling is guilt. What did I do wrong? What did I not do well enough? Oh my God, why did I not, you know? And you have to just say, forget it, move on. We are where we are. Let's just get this moving and get it cleared up. So you have to be very careful of the team and also the other staff out there and what they're doing and what they know, because the one thing you have to remember in all of this is that it's all confidential. So you have to keep everything tight. Your team has to be tight. The knowledge circle has to be tight. You can't let people know. You have to stay calm throughout all of this. And it's really important to keep the whole thing confidential, because you don't know that if it leaked out that you discovered the hit, that actually the attackers would be waiting to come in, whereas as it was, we didn't make any contact with them. But what I did was empower the IT team to do what they had to do and say no when they needed to say no to people and say, I can't do that. No, that's not our priority. You don't underestimate the psychological impact of this as well, because, as I said, it's the level of uncertainty. You have to descale the incident down to, you know, don't let it get under your skin, because it is a criminal attack. And so you have to think, no, you're right, we just work through the system, work through the processes. And I'll give you some hints and tips of some things that we discovered during it that might be of use to you. But it's really about keeping the team together and take every single win that you can get. So the minute you get your comms back up and running, you celebrate that. The minute you discover your backups are okay on the tape version, you celebrate that. You take every single win. But you have to be very careful to manage your expectations and be realistic about what you can do, not what you want to do, and just what needs to be done, and the length of time it's going to take. we were very lucky. We had 2 weeks or a couple of days we were back on within Colm side. By the end of the week, we're back on the finance side, and overall it was 5 weeks to get everything back up and running. Next slide, please, Gary. I'm going to just mention the ICO countdown because it is horrific. You have 72 hours in which you have to reply. You have to tell the ICO what's happened. You have to fill in all these forms. You're watching that clock constantly for the 72 hours. And what I found really strange was that during this time, when you're reporting to ICO, the information commissioners, you can't tell anybody, any of the data subjects that might have been affected, such as your staff, that their details may have been affected. And so you have to say, well, you know, we've had a virus, just be extra vigilant, because you want people to remain protected and to make sure that their bank accounts are protected. But the ICO countdown is just, you can deal with nearly the cyber attack itself and getting your systems restored, but when you're trying to provide details for the form that has to be filled in, to find out the evidence, to provide it, to tell whether data has been taken or not, the level of unknowns is really quite extraordinary. Next slide, Gary, please. We were very lucky, as I said, 5 weeks, and we came out stronger from it because we spent the money then and put in all of the additional security measures that we probably didn't ever think we needed, but we do. And we are very, very aware of the risks, and I don't ever for 1 minute think that we will not be hit again. But at least this next time we'll be better prepared. Next slide, please. So these are a couple of recommendations from me, from our lessons, is to keep a log of everything during the incident. And I'm not just talking about an incident log that maybe the incident team are keeping. I'm talking about you yourself. You go around with a book in your hand and you write down every single time, what time you called people, when you call people, because things are happening so fast. You can't remember who you've called, when you called, did you call, what day did you call, you know, because the first 5 days are just nearly 24 hours. It's just incredible the amount of things that need to be done and thought about. So I would strongly recommend you carry that book with you at all times. I still have it and still get the nervous shudders when I see it. The ICOs I talked about, that was horrific. And so if you can, I would say have your templates ready as much as you possibly can in advance, because they ask for the numbers of staff, they ask for insurance details, and if all that's in your system, can't get that. So obviously we've had to since then consider what are the most valuable items for the organization, and actually in this organization it's nearly everything. You think I'll be able to hone it in, you can't. There's so much that you need in a crisis, and so what you really need to have is a standalone source of the most important information that you need for handling any incident, such as staff numbers, bank account details, finance, and you need to think about which is a separate computer that just turns on and somebody has it, and you keep it up to date regularly for handling that incident. Obviously, we've increased our security. We've trained staff on everything that we can. We regularly update that. I would strongly suggest as well that you call a crisis meeting, your business continuity plan, not at 3 o'clock on a Friday with your cups of coffee in the boardroom, but at 8 o'clock on a Friday night, or 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning, or if you're really, really evil, 3 p.m. on Christmas Eve. I would suggest that you revisit your business continuity plans, because when we went to ours, we had all these fantastic business continuity plans, big logbooks. Well, they're no use to you because you don't even have the time to look at them. I don't mean they're no use at all, but you need just the most important information in front of you, the phone numbers, the steps, what you have to do. It would be like seeing a fire in the corner there, and you go and you get the fire extinguisher and you bring it over and you start reading the manual. It doesn't work like that. You need 3 steps and that's it. Next slide, Gary, please. So what I say is test everyone and test everything randomly. Vigilance is so important, and that's we have a monitoring system in now. Off-site backups, which we're doing, but during remote working, make sure that is happening. Obviously ours are again. Revisit any risks to your organization regularly, and it's good to have the contact lists. We had it because of COVID, but it's really good for you to have contact lists for staff, like personal details, mobile phones, if the HR keeps it or whatever. But have that information and your stakeholders up to date, because you have no email. and you have to maybe work off private emails, which is, you have to be very careful of that as well. I would strongly suggest that you procure your services from an external organisation to provide that expertise, because if you're a small organisation, you don't need it in-house 24/7. But I would say have that call off contracts now, and get it in place so that you have it sitting there. There's no point in going to start that when you're in the middle of a crisis. And don't expect anything from anybody, because you're on your own, apart from when you bring in the experts to help you. It really is your problem. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I'm not going to go through the detail of this. I've just given you an idea of what we've done. We've next generation firewalls in, we've moved to cloud services, central management solution to access policies. We appointed a CISO, which it's actually a virtual CISO. So they've been able to come in and do a cybersecurity maturity assessment and an incident response plan and cyber strategy. Next slide, please. And then these are some more of what we've done. Two-factor authentication, encryption on all the most important data, such as the HR and finance, which speaks to Colm's point about the alarm going off in one room, implementation of the backup on the hardware. Next slide again, please. This is never ending. And unfortunately with cyber and your security, it has to go on and on and on and on. So constant action of upgrading, making sure everything's up to date, regular pen testing, health checking of our systems, implementation of security awareness training regularly for staff, doing some phishing exercises to test them, to make sure they don't click on those links, all of those type of things. Next slide, please. And next again. But just to say, our CISO has picked up the fact that we have a firm called CIFRA, and they were doing this for us, and they've picked up the fact that we've been at, again, the attempted attacks on us, such as those from China, Vietnam and Russia. But so there's been multiple attempts over a short period of time, but because they've all been contained within the firewall, they've all been picked up by the preventative measures in place. So we're very lucky, but that's what I'm saying, we'll never let our guard down again. Next slide, please. The ongoing improvement, again, just some items that we're continually doing. Decommissioning older software is really important. Cleaning up your data, getting rid of anything you do not need to have on your systems, get it off them, because that all adds to your data at the end of the day. And the last slide, please. My advice is we're all facing the same threat, and the sooner that everyone takes action, the sooner we will all be protected. And you have to think about this from your own personal data, whether it's your health data or your finance data. You would want to be sure that the organisation that holds that data is doing everything they possibly can. These guys will always stay ahead of us, but as long as you've done everything you can, then you can sleep easy in your bed. Obviously everybody looks at their risk framework, and they look at their enterprise risks and their, financial, reputational risks and all of those risks. But the one thing I would ask you to think about is your moral risk for the data, and your responsibility and accountability for the data your organization holds on either your staff or your projects, or your customers or whatever, and make sure that you've done everything you can. So thank you very much. That's me finished, Colette.
Thanks, Gina. And I think Colm will join us now just for questions.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Good. So, yeah, I mean, I know that we didn't have a run through this beforehand, but I was just completely amazed about how the two presentations so complemented each other, really, in terms of picking up Gina's very practical experience. Colm, I think you said at one point in your presentation that you would talk about what you do when you get that ransom letter, and how you might react. Maybe you could expand on that just.
Yeah. So it is an interesting one. I've dealt with many clients and boards in relation to this, and there's certain aspects to it. One is an organization never considers in advance, and they should, as to whether they pay ransom, and this happens to be ransomware. And in relation to that, there is first of all the ethical issue of do you pay criminals? Secondly is, because of terrorist financing, are you able to pay criminals? And it gets very emotive with boards, where boards are going, okay, our Deloitte, you're saying we can't, for terrorist financing reasons, however, you know, we may have an organization within our network that we can, and we want to get our business back up and running. So first of all, an organization needs to understand whether it would or whether it wouldn't. I've done a poll of providers like us, and 3/4 of us agree that you shouldn't pay ransomware, for many, many reasons. Some of our Israeli colleagues are actually more pro paying ransomware, interestingly, from my conversations with them. In relation to it as well, not only do you need Bitcoin to be able to pay it, so your treasurer needs to have Bitcoin to hand to be able to pay it. The other aspect, when you get over the ethical and the legal aspect to it as well, is once you pay, you get a set of keys, and it's not like downloading. This is what people need to understand. It's not like downloading a movie on Apple or on Netflix. The keys don't literally just turn you back on. So first of all, you got to get the keys. That doesn't take so long. And there is call centers. Most of the cyber attackers will have a call center that you can ring, and I mean a call center. They'll give you the keys, but it then can take up to 2 weeks for you to be able to get your systems back up and running. Similar to what Gina was saying, this is like keys to software, but you've got to apply the keys to all parts of your business. That's you back up and running within 2 to 3 weeks. So you got to measure that versus actually you do what Gina did and scrub and go. And the underlying threat is you've now dealt with terrorists, and you're in a position of saying, okay, do I trust them that they've given me the keys, but they've actually left my building? Or have they given me the keys and they're still in my building? So it's a big journey that you have to take, but one that senior executive and boards need to actually define what they would do, but also have that parachute cord to say, actually, if you know, what are the extinction events that we may decide that we need to pay it. But as I say, the majority of people would recommend against paying it.
Okay, a few questions in then. Question: where do you draw the line? If you were to implement everything suggested, your budget could not be big enough. And actually, a second question to Gina, could Gina say something about the financial impact of the cost of sorting it out compared to the cost of taking the preventive measures they have now? And also, how did the ICO rule on the matter? So a few questions in there. Gina, do you want to start with where do you draw the line and the cost?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that is a consideration of how much do you spend on your systems, and that's all depends on the size of your budget, the size of your organization, the data you hold, and it's proportionate to that, you know, because obviously we're not going to be as protected as, you know, or run the systems the same as banks or whatever, but you know, you take what you can. That's why, for example, we have a virtual CISO, whereas other organizations will have a CISO in-house, depending on the size, which information security officer, that is, who advises on all of this. So you can take action. You can get an assessment done that they tell you what are your priority areas, and then you pick those and the budget associated with those. And we haven't done everything that we could do, but we've done what we can within our budget and what's required for our organization. And in relation to the financial impact, yes, of course, you're spending money on restoring and the services to get that done, the emergency act of that, whereas we could have spent the same money on preventative, and we would have maybe not, it would have happened. We've taken extra steps now, but I think everybody has taken extra steps in terms of security. You know, we had firewalls here, but they probably weren't the next generation firewalls. We needed the bigger firewalls. You know, it was a brute force attack, so they got through and somewhere in the firewall. But it's all about, I can absolutely guarantee you, anything you spend on prevention will be much better spent than on recovery. Because when you're standing in that room looking around thinking your whole business could be lost, and I'm talking about from a public sector point of view, which we could never pay the ransom. I mean, Department of Finance are our sponsors, no chance. But I did consider it myself at one point, what would it cost? But when you're standing looking around the room, and if you're a private business, that's your business gone.
Mm-hmm.
So you take what steps you have to, and yes, of course, it does cost money, but it's like car insurance, you know, or health insurance. It's the same thing. Preventative measures or insurance. Thank goodness the ICO ruled that, yeah, we did everything we possibly could. There was no evidence of data being exfiltrated. We did everything, and so we were able to. That was fine. There was no issue there. They were satisfied with all that we had in place, which is, you know, were satisfied with as well, and also the measures that you take when you discover the cyber attack. That's all part of it, and that's why I'm saying the ICO, the filling in of that is a huge pressure for those 72 hours.
Yeah, reassuring that to get the assurance at the end of it, though, I suppose, and in reflection. Yeah, Colm, somebody's asked a question about are your IT systems more secure or totally secure if they're on the cloud?
No. You can't. There's no sweeping statement around that, unfortunately, and you can see from the slides that there is obviously vulnerabilities within the cloud, depending whether it's a private or public cloud. But effectively, your engagement, if I can call it that, your linkage to the cloud is a point of vulnerability, and also the fact that your user base, and to go back to Gina's point, there's certain things that you can do that don't cost a lot of money. In terms of risk, kind of future protecting yourself, and staff training is a huge part of that. And no matter how robust your technology is, if you poorly trained staff who are loose in terms of their behaviors, if you have it in the cloud or you have it on prem, then you're equally as vulnerable. So there's no single answer in relation to that. You can't outsource this risk, I'm afraid.
Another sort of associated one, what are the trends that we are seeing with regards to in-house versus outsourcing IT security?
Yeah, certainly there's two pieces. One is in relation to having that burst capacity, and that burst capacity is not only IT security people, but it's also capacity in terms of manually doing invoices, stock counting, or whatever that might be, to support the business, or lifting pallets, because obviously sometimes, you know, automated systems collapse, and therefore you've got to go back to old-fashioned forklifts. So you need to look at the breadth of your business to understand what you're going to outsource, and IT security is one of those. Outsourcing CISOs, because the market is so tight for CISOs, is another area where organizations are looking at that, similar to where organizations in the past have outsourced non-core aspects of their business. You outsource to CISO, where you can get, you know, where you don't need someone full-time, but you want the best you can get.
Okay, and just a final question then, Gina, for you. Did you think there was any reputational risk for you as a result of this cyber attack?
I mean, yes, you have to consider your reputational risk as one of your normal risks anyway. But yes, the projects, thank goodness, as I say, they're all their information was safe and secure, and we let them know that there had been a cyber attack, but that it had been, you know, that their information wasn't affected, and all the emails weren't affected. So that was good. But there is always a reputational risk with it. I mean, I know people would say, well, why do you talk about it? Why do you actually talk about it? But I talk about it in the hope that I help somebody else not face the same things that we faced, and maybe have some things in place. But because people are like, oh, you don't talk, you know, because it means you weren't maybe as secure as you should be. So we didn't get any reputational fallout in regards to, we had all we needed to have. We thought we were secure, you know, but there is, of course, a reputational damage that we were lucky we had everything back and running again. But if an organization doesn't, it was like Gary or Colm was saying earlier, you know, it's what does the client think of you, or what does your customer think of you, or what do they consider business as normal? Thankfully, we are back business as normal, and we're back within 5 weeks and much better secured. But yeah, you have to consider all of that, and there is a bit of like, oh, maybe we should have done that 6 months ago.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Hindsight's a great thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for telling your story, Gina, and Colm, for the fascinating insights today. I think, as I said before, I think both of you complemented each other fantastically, and I hope that it's benefited all the people who have been watching today. it's not an area that I would be familiar with, but I find both your presentations to be very relatable and practical, you know, too, and understandable. So thank you again, and thanks for accepting our invite to be part of this. Really do appreciate it. And just finally from me, I'll plug for our next public sector seminar, which is scheduled for the 23rd of February, and it's on the very topical issue of climate change and sustainability. And we have 3 great speakers lined up looking at different aspects of that. So, you know, please come and join us for that. And the invites will be out soon so make sure you look out for those. And I hope you can come to that event. And take care, everyone, and stay safe. Bye.